Move the body. I'm just realizing my office does not look really nice for YouTube live things. But anyways, here we are. That's a bag of clothes I'm going to be donating. We're at it. We are here. We're doing this thing. It's day 2. Had some coffee with the Sports Pain Jedi. I knew for the most part, at least in the beginning, I'd be talking to myself. So definitely collected some questions. People have asked about some of the baseball stuff that we do. Just a brief introduction to Spark Performance. Spark Performance is a new offshoot of the brand that we have already established, Spark Physiotherapy, in the Northern Virginia area. And Spark Performance is going to be where we'll silo off a lot of our athletic development, our youth sports, and our amateur sports organization work, our small squad training sessions, our coaching, our off-season work will be in sort of a new environment. It's going to allow us the ability to allow our clients' abilities to schedule practice time, indoor cage time, entire indoor practice field time, and then as well as that, you get access to all of the services that we're doing on the athletic development side for programming. This way, it's like having a gym membership as a youth athlete. You're going to have all the education given to you, spoon-fed. We're going to have lots of data going back and forth. But I digress. That Spark Performance thing is exciting, and it's coming soon. But on that topic, I wanted to chat about just some of the major questions we get all the time about baseball. And specifically, one of them is, what's the approach? What are we doing any differently than anywhere else? And frankly, we're not doing anything different than any high-level athlete is already doing. We are constantly watching movement. We are constantly assessing for areas of weakness or power leakage. And so it's not different. It's just the volume of baseball players, the volume of teams, the volume of select programs, and frankly, the volume of coaches who mean really well, but don't fully understand what it means to be a year-long athlete. That's just gotten quite a bit worse over the last decades. Everyone thinks that their kid's going to play professional baseball, which is a terrific goal, but playing college baseball is a terrific goal. Playing high school baseball is a terrific goal. The setting a goal that high is sort of kind of a silly goal. I mean, this is one of those things that happens when you just love doing the game. When you love it, then the work that goes into doing the game isn't work at all, and you will get better at the game. And so that approach has always been there. The people who are going to play at the highest levels, you know what they look like when they walk down the street. They are constantly talking, thinking, constantly in the baseball world. And so whether it's in the gym or it's on the practice field. But the other thing is too, that they're listening, the best ones listen to the folks who are trying to manage the load on the young growing body. And so having programming that spans the entire year is the difference, is the big approach. And it's not necessarily that you have to be lifting all year the same way, but that the lifting that occurs as a baseball player throughout the course of a year has to match the work loads that are going to be faced by the athlete, or at least prepare them for those. Right now, we're actually doing our small squad program, our Diamond Standouts programming via the Spark Performance brand, and we're running that multiple times per week with multiple stratified kids by age and sport, and we're having a terrific time. We start every one of those combines with every one of those test training sessions with a big combine, assessing up to 20 different metrics for on-field baseball power, strength, injury preparedness. And then we compare those numbers toward the end of the workout session. And this is going to be an 8-week cycle, which right now we're around 5 weeks into. So the guys are flying around, they're understanding all the movements now, and really are making some interesting gains. So that approach is not different. If you are a high-level athlete, if you are someone who really wants to be the best squash player, the best baseball player, the best tennis player, the best chess player, you're constantly in the things that make you good at it, and it doesn't seem like a chore. So that is the approach that's never changed, that we're just trying to expose to anyway. Everyone needs to understand that is the way that this should all go. So that's the approach. Another question was, what's the most common injury? Well, it depends on the level. And so professional athletes, are having shoulder strain, elbow pain issues. At the younger levels, they're, back and knee and hip issues, more issues of total body control. I mean, the guys at the highest levels are just right on the edge of being catastrophically exploding into pieces or maintaining that high level of ability. And so that is another reason why the approach in having year-long conditioning and year-long understanding about what performance means and what injury risk means is part of that whole process. And so, yes, in the professional levels, it's the smaller injuries, it's the smaller joints, Today we saw another major pitcher go down for the rest of the year with a teres minor strain. That's a muscle that internally rotates the shoulder. Sorry, teres major was the strain, and that's what the muscle does. And that can be considered a muscle that turns on when we have shoulder fatigue. I'm not going to mention names, but certainly these are the things that can happen. As we go forward, we will chat about more specific injuries, specifically in the baseball, football, jiu-jitsu worlds. This is places that I keep a very close eye, and we see a lot of folks in those disciplines. The best physical therapy exercises. This is a question I get. So what should my son do? What should my softball playing daughter do? And frankly, the big one is around arm care. I think the words arm care are sort of crazy. Full body care is arm care, period. That is the end. If all you are doing to bulletproof your shoulder against the stresses of the single most violent sport activity there is a human body can really do, with this and that and whatever, that is just not what the shoulder looks like when it's doing those movements. You have to train the shoulder in the path, in the arc, and then make sure that all of the things that make the throwing process happen are just dialed in. And so if I see another open front side and lazy, front hand and externally rotated stride side, I don't know how else to explain that. If you're not doing all that right, I don't care how much of this you're doing. You will never overcome terrible technique. And so every athlete we come in there, every throwing athlete that comes through here, we have them throw. We have to see what's going on. And it's not a huge surprise many times that they're just lacking some basic knowledge on what throwing mechanics should look like. We recommend throwing coaches in this area constantly. We have a network of coaches throughout the country, so it kind of doesn't matter where you're from. We can find somebody who's got a good eyeball and can watch that, because we can do it at a high level. Pitching coaches and baseball coaches can do it at an extremely high level. But again, if you're doing the major things wrong, it's obvious. Like we got to fix those. And that is, that's the main way. I guess the other question was like, how does PT help? It's like, well, don't think of physical therapy as only what happens when you have surgery or you're sick or you're injured or you're debilitated. Physical therapists have a high level of knowledge and understanding in the fine movements that occur to make sporting movement happen. So if you really want to understand what's going on with your elbow or your shoulder or your back, yes, you can ask your coach, your baseball coach, and while he may or may not have had that injury, that doesn't make him an expert at that. You could ask a guy who has had a cup of coffee in the major leagues. Hey, you hurt your back. What did you do when you hurt your back? Well, what if the thing that was the result of his back hurting isn't what is making your back hurt? Well, his advice means absolutely nothing to you. Plus, he's not skilled at telling you that. But he went to the major leagues, and so he might have credibility in other places. He just does not extend to what being an athlete is, just because he's an athlete. Now, that person had the exact same chances as you, say you had the same diet and all the same, opportunities. Yes, you could follow that person's plan and maybe have some success, but that doesn't go across the board. There's a lot of contextual changes that will make that different. So that physical therapy is not just when you're hurt. I guess that's how it helps, because it's some of the best coaches in the world are also physical therapists. You might not realize that. I had one last question was, what do MLB players eat? What is the nutritional requirement for being a high-level athlete? And the reality is it's a lot of calories. It's energy expenditure. So you could think of every workout as another energy expenditure, a load you have to pay for. You think about your movement economy. Every day you go to sleep, you're loading your movement account. Every time you have a nice meal, every time you're well rested, every time you prime your body, every time you do a skill that is something you're practiced at, that movement, that skill will cost less. If it's walking up and down the stairs, it still takes movement energy. Let's say that's a very low level exercise. Let's say we're just walking. Walking costs $1 a step, but sprinting costs $50 a step or stride. Well, it's more power. There's more juice going into it, so it makes sense that it would require more economy, more resources. So let's say that with that example, one could say if you had an unlimited bank account, you could run, you could sprint, or you could walk without any issue, no problems. But the reality is we all have a movement account, and every day that movement account changes. You set that movement account by being strong and fit and well rested and having good nutrition. You're going to be very capable with those boxes checked. And if you don't have all those boxes checked, then it's kind of a sliding scale. Your movement account for that day may be slightly depleted versus a different day. Your movement account over the course of a year could be depleted. And if you think about how competitive years go, if you're trying to prepare for one event, Well, then every extra calorie you spend or extra calorie you put in is really, you can tie right to the performance on that event. If you, all of the things kept equal, if you're monitoring that kind of stuff at a high level. So it isn't so much about what specifically they eat, it's that they get enough energy to replace the activity and they continue to build. You're not gonna, no one builds during the course of a year, especially a high volume sport like baseball, basketball, hockey, extremely high volume. So those guys are trying their best to just not get weak over the course of a year, even though they may have started very strong. The guys who get hurt are the ones who just get weaker faster, and then their body starts to compensate and things start to break down. So yes, that is important to understand the energy consumption more so than what, if they're eating peanut butter and jelly or they're vegans. It doesn't really matter. And we can get into that another time. So that is it today. I wanted to just chat about the baseball stuff we got going on. We'll chat a little bit next time about what we're building in the Spark Fieldhouse. That's extremely exciting. We're trying to open up the Northern Virginia is like actual Northern Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, first indoor practice facility, batting cages, practice facility, cages for all different kinds of turf-bound sports, to include all of the Spark physiotherapy offerings, from sports rehabilitation, sports rehab, post-op, dry needling, manual therapy. So we're very excited about it, and just stay tuned here and our other channels. Instagram is a great place to take a peek and see what we're doing day to day. But as I learn how to do this streaming stuff, I will give as much information as you want and talk as much as you like to talk about movement and pain, anything that can provide some help to the health-seeking community. All right, guys, later.